Hey everyone, my name is David Rao and I'm the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, a variety of places when you search for my name, David Rao, or Make Moments Matter. Tonight I'm going to be talking about lesson planning, resources you can use, what you might want to think about as you're doing lesson plans, and also share some freebies, things that I've used and you might consider using if you want. That's in just a second. If you hear me talk about a resource, something you're really interested in, a book, a puppet, or whatever in any of these videos, there's a whole web page or a whole page on my blog dedicated to the things that I talk about in these videos. You can find that by clicking the link at the bottom of the caption of this video or wherever it is you're watching, listening to this. Or you can go to my blog, makemomentsmatter.org, and click the video tab and find our current year for Musical Mondays. And all the stuff is there, including the lesson plan templates I'm going to talk about today. Let's see. And then also one more thing. I was just in New Jersey for New Jersey Music Educators. I shared 4 workshops. It was super duper fun. Met a lot of cool people. And had fun time exploring Atlantic City. If you want to come to an in-person workshop, look for workshops around you, search for things around you, look for local ORF chapters, local Kodai chapters. If you want to see me present, I'm doing 2 more workshops this school year. One with the Greater Augusta ORF chapter, that is on March 23rd, and that is in Augusta, Georgia. So if you're in the area, we'd love to have you. And the other is First Iowa ORF, that's on April 6th. That is in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Not Cedar Rapids, but Cedar Falls, which is just north of Des Moines. And by just north, I mean a ways north. But anyway, if you're in Des Moines or around the area and you want to come join us, it'll be a great time. That's coming up in just a few weeks. Okay, so let's talk about lesson planning. So I've been talking about this a lot with my student teacher recently. I've been talking with other folks about it at NJMEA and other places. And so lesson planning, I feel like there are a couple things to consider. When you're planning lessons for students, you have to consider the lesson plan does a couple things. It helps you plan and think through what it is you're trying to teach to students and how. And then it also can be used in the moment when you are teaching. So for me, a lesson plan, it helps me organize all my thoughts, keep everything together. And then once I'm actually teaching the lesson, it keeps me on track. So I like to use the lesson. I know there's some people who are like, I don't have to write down anything. I'm not one of those people. I know. So there are some people like, I don't have to write down anything. I just go in and I teach the thing. Cool. I am not that person. And so when I'm planning for lessons, I like to use my lesson plan and use a specific template to sort of help me think through how I'm planning, what do I need to do, what is included, what are the resources I might need, stuff like that. And then in the moment when I'm actually teaching the lesson, I refer back to my lesson plan all the time, unless it's like, you're in a rotation where you have like 8 days where you teach the same lesson. If it's day 8, I don't know, maybe you have it memorized by then. But even then, I like to think about, I like to reference the lesson plan. Now, I'm currently in a position where I see students on a 5-day rotation, and I see them once in that rotation. However, I have taught in situations where it's like a 7-day rotation, or maybe I see them twice in 5 days. And there would be times where in that twice in 5 days, where I'd see them like a half hour twice in a 5-day rotation, there would be times where I would see like the B lesson and then I would see the A. So like in the 5 days, I would like teach all these classes and I would teach them like the A lesson of the week and then the B lesson of the week. And on that like middle way through the week or through the rotation, there'd be a time where like some classes would be ready for their B lesson, but some classes in the same grade would not have had their A lesson yet. It just was like a weird scheduling thing. So using the lesson plan, like if I had it all written out, I would know like, okay, this is what I covered. This is what I need to cover still. And so it helped me plan and helped me stay on track. Especially for young teachers, I think you should write out your lesson plans. I think it's just so beneficial to make sure that you're scaffolding things correctly, that you're planning correctly. It's worth doing. Now, how you write a lesson plan is different for different people. For instance, if you're writing for a half hour versus for an hour, if you're writing for 45 minutes, if you're, like how you write and how you plan the specific lesson, it depends on your comfort, your what you're doing. Are you using instruments? Are you not? Are you doing complex? It all depends on what content you're adding in. But I still think it's great to have like a physical, actual plan to plan with. I know there are some people who love using digital lesson, like they use like planbook.com or whatever. I am, by the way, not affiliated with any digital lesson planning. So if I say something like whatever planbook.com, I don't use it. I don't know. I think that's a site, but like I don't have like an affinity to one or the other. That's like the only one I know of. But I know there are multiple places where you can like have your lesson plans digitally. I personally don't like that for two reasons. One, because when I'm writing out the lesson plan, physically writing it helps me remember and plan. I like physically writing it. I mean, when I take notes, I take physical notes. I can't take notes on a computer unless I don't have a pen or pencil, and then I guess I might take them on my phone or computer. But I don't take notes on a computer because I remember it better if I write it out. That's me personally. Also, I don't like digital lesson plans because I just feel like they're, again, I reference them in the moment. I reference them as I'm teaching. And so I don't want to have to like run over to my computer or grab an iPad and try and find a digital copy. I prefer a printed copy, but that's just me. Okay. So, but all that to say, there are some people who do physical copies, some people who do digital copies. I take my physical copies and then I scan them and I have a digital, like a receipt or an artifact of that lesson. But I don't necessarily, I don't do everything digital, if that makes sense. Okay, then what you put in your plans, like how you plan a lesson. I'm not going to get into like, you should do this first and then this and then this and then this. But let's talk about the planning of it itself. So what goes on your lesson plan depends on two things. It depends on you and how you function as a teacher, and it depends on your principal. Your administrator, because I have been in schools where some administrators are like, you need lesson plans. If I ask for them, you should be able to give them to me. And I've also had principals who say, I want you to put a copy of your lesson plans in my box every week. Okay. I mean, I've lived through both sets of principals, the ones who are more hands-off and the ones who are, let's just say, hands-on. I'm maybe micromanaging. I don't know, but I've been in both. Also, when I was a younger teacher, my principals would require lesson plans more often just to make sure that I was on track and stuff like that. But your lesson plan, what you put on it depends on you and how you function as a teacher, and also it depends on what your administration requires. So when I was in a situation where my administration required that I turn in lesson plans, they required that on that lesson plan I included any national standards I was covering, my objectives, vocabulary I was going to do. That my admin at that time required some things, so then I had to put that on my lesson plan. But then thinking about me personally, when I was a younger teacher, it was very, very helpful to have things like the national standards, my district standards, things that I needed to include in the lesson on the lesson plan, because it helped me think through how I was going to teach this lesson. If I look at like my lesson plan templates over the years, in my earlier years, I had a lot of things on that lesson plan of like, you need to have this and this and this and this. And now it's like sort of like a big blank, like just open space, because I don't need as many reminders. I will show you an example of that in just a second so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But again, what you put in your lesson plan depends on what your principal wants and what you want and how you want to do it. So let me show you some examples of lesson plan templates, and all of these are on the links page or will be. There are a couple that I have at school on my school computer that I didn't bring home, but I will upload them so that you have access to these if you want. Okay, so let me show you. Let me switch this over. Hold on. Okay, let me switch the Instagram, folks. Okay, so let me show you my very, very first lesson plan template from like forever ago back in the day. So this lesson plan, oh, I wonder if I can zoom in for the Facebooky folks. Let me see. Hold on, Facebook. Let me see if I can zoom in. Can I zoom? Nope. Okay, well. Oh, okay, it's being weird. All right, well, let me just see. Let me try one more thing. Oh, here, why don't I just make this big? That's being silly. Oh, okay, wow, that's really big. All right, well, so this gives us at least a chance to look at it. So this is like my first original lesson plan and what I included. So you can see on there, at the very top, it tells me what grade I'm teaching. Then there are a couple boxes at the top. The first one says focus area. And this is to just kind of help me think through like what specifically I'm going to be doing in the lesson. So in there, you'll see little check boxes that say stuff like singing, pitch matching, tone, harmony, moving, instruments, rhythm, reading, composition, form, dictation. I haven't used this exact lesson plan in a couple years. So if I were to do it again, I would probably change some of those little headers in there, but that's just like a general idea for me to help me think through, are we singing, are we playing instruments, are we doing movement, composition, just to give me like a touchstone as we went. Then you'll see another box that says national standards, and in that, it's the old standards. It's the, 91 standards, the 90s standards. So singing alone and with others, a varied repertoire of music, performing on instruments alone and with others. These are the standards that I first used when I was first teaching, because those were the current standards at that time. So that's why those are there. You'll also see, and so I could just check those off as I was going. So I knew in the lesson, which of these national standards am I hitting? Then you'll also see a box that says objectives. The learner will be able to ... And then another one that says district checkpoint. Those are all in the top row. So the first one, objectives, this is like my statement of what the learner will do. Like our main big point in the lesson. There might, you know, if you're lesson planning, you might have a couple objectives, but this just shows my principal that I have an objective. The district checkpoint would be like our district curriculum, things that I wanted to hit in there. Underneath that, you'll see three other boxes. One says review, one says present, and one says assessment. So the review box is there so that I can remember like, oh yeah, I've already taught this before. So like if I was taking a song and I was going to add something new, in the review box, I might write like green grass grew all around so that I know that like I have already taught this. And then under present, I might put like new verses or new whatever for that specific song. Or maybe I say in review, I put like green grass grew all around, and under present, I put half notes or whatever. So the review is content they have already learned. The present is content they have not yet learned. It just helps me keep track so that I know like week by week, what am I doing that's new, or a review. It's especially helpful when you have multiple classes going and it's like hard to remember, which did I do? And then under assessment, this was again for a principal to help them know like, how am I assessing my students? Is it on-demand assessment? Is it an oral assessment? Is it observation? Is it work samples? What are those work samples going to look like? That's why there's a little colon there. Just to help my principal know that like, yes, I'm assessing and here's how. Okay, so the top row is like standards, state standards, main goal. The next one is for me mostly like to help me know what I've done, what I've yet to do, and how I need to assess. Underneath that are two more like smaller boxes. One says materials needed and one says vocabulary. The materials needed is really helpful for me because it lets me know like, oh rats, I gotta go grab the cowbell or whatever. So I know going into the lesson like, ooh, you need to grab out these 5 things. Or whatever. It just helps me know what's included in that lesson. And then vocabulary, I put that in there not because like, oh, I need to learn what vocabulary is, but because again, when I'm teaching multiple lessons for multiple grades, I need to remember which vocabulary words I'm focusing on. So like maybe I'm doing dynamics with 2 or 3 grades, but maybe only one of those grades is doing, like maybe the younger grades are doing just forte and piano, and maybe a different one is doing crescendo. So in the vocabulary box, I'll put any vocabulary that I am specifically touching on that day that I need to make sure that I focus on and use multiple times. Under that is where like the actual lesson planning goes. So like I've broken it into like 3 little boxes, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, just to help me sort of parse out and think like, this was again when I was a younger teacher where I needed to think about what are my transitions going to be? What are my main points going to be? How am I going to plan this out? So it just sort of helps me think like, first this, then this, then this. And at the bottom it says, there's a big box that says notes, extensions, exit question. This is like, if I have time at the end of the lesson, what am I going to do? How am I going to assess them on their way out, extensions, things like that. And then over on the right, it says like teacher 1, teacher 2, teacher 3. Well, in my school, I would change that to like, the names of the homeroom teachers. So like Smith, Vaughn, Zimble, whatever. And then as I teach the lesson, I check it off. So again, I know like, 2 or 3 weeks down the road, oh, wow, that class had, they had a field trip, so I didn't teach that lesson. That's why that's not checked off. This was my like original lesson plan from way back in the day. A couple years ago, I did an update of it. And let me show you that. So, well, you can see one of the big updates is I switched from Comic Sans to a less offensive font, so that was one of the things. But in here, so the focus area is basically the same, that main first box. Under National Standards, I changed it to the new National Standards. So instead of like singing alone and with others, it says improvise melodies, variations, and accompaniments, compose and arrange within guidelines, share creative work. It's the new standards, just a simplified version. The objectives box and the district checkpoint stays the same. Review, present, assessment, that stays the same. Pretty much everything else stays the same, but I just did an update for the new national standards and made it look not so gross. Comic Sans. No longer a fan. Okay. But again, new teacher, you don't know what you don't know. And so I use Comic Sans. All right, let me show you another lesson plan. So this was a few years later when I was teaching, hold on. I have lost, okay, I'll zoom in on this. Hold on, let's see if I can zoom. Woo! I'm doing I'm such a great digital native. You can see it. Okay, this was when I had half-hour lessons, and I saw them twice in a 5-day rotation. So this, you can see there's way less on here. This was when my principal was like, I don't need you to write all the national standards and stuff. This is when I switched to, instead of putting it on the lesson, I had like a running checklist off on a different binder. So as I was going through and teaching those things, I would check it off there so I knew that I was getting to it, but I didn't put it on every single lesson. Plus also, I had been teaching with that mindset of like, put it on the lessons for so many years that like, I had that in my head already. So I didn't really need it on every lesson plan. So this is just sort of big open boxes. At this point, I was able to sort of write out, like the name of the song, what comes next, sort of detailed through here. Off on the left, I have these little open spots. So there I'd write like lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3. So I knew my progression. There's a big K at the top to help me know it's kindergarten. At the bottom, it also says kindergarten. And then the date range. This helps me know, like, when do I start teaching this and when do I stop? So this was like a 2-week sort of lesson plan. So I would write, like, January 22nd through February 12th or whatever it was that I was teaching that lesson. And I have that for K through 5. And it kind of helps me plan through and think like, okay, so like lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, lesson 4. And it's actually kind of cool to see it this way because you can see the progression of lessons 1, 2, 3, 4. It really helps you think, linear through the lesson through multiple weeks. Instead of just seeing one lesson at a time, you see multiple lessons at a time. Again, this works, I think, for someone who's a little bit more experienced writing lesson plans and who has done it for a while so that you don't have to have all that extra sort of ephemeral stuff on there. And then I'll show you the lesson plan I'm using currently. This is now that I see students for an hour once every 5 days, I have even less, more big open space. And so on here, so like this is similar to what you just saw, but instead of 4 boxes on one page, I have 2 boxes on one page. It still gives me basically 2 weeks of lessons, going through where the first lesson, second lesson, there's a little circle in each rectangular box. So in that first lesson spot, I'd write like a 1, and the next big box, I'd write a 2. Over here on the right, it's very, very faint, but you can see it's because I scanned it. My actual lesson's a little bit darker, but there's a K. And then over here on the right, that's where I put extra things I need to remember. So I put over here on the right, like vocabulary. I put specific standards. If I need to pull out instruments, reminders to myself, or like, ooh, you should do this next, I put that kind of over here on the right. But the main bulk of all the lesson and scaffolding that out goes here on the big open spot on the left. And I have this for kindergarten, first grade, second, third, fourth, and fifth. I will put this on the links page soon. The other lesson planning thing that I definitely absolutely advocate is I use this thing. I call it a song and poem map. So it's, let me see if I can enlarge this. Okay. So it's basically just line by line, and then over on the right it says month. So what is this for? So as I teach a song or lesson, I write here on the left the name of the song or the poem or the whatever. And on the right, I put like just the month of when it started. So at the beginning of the year, I might write like, welcome back to school song, whatever. And then on the month, I'd put August. And then as I go through, I write down everything. So if I do a song, if I do a poem, if I introduce a new concept, I do it here. It's kind of a running record of what I've taught and when. So then over here on the right, like when I flip over to a new month, so like when I hit March, I'll write March here on the right, and everything below that is March until we get to April. We're all right in April. But I do this so that I can look back and very quickly know, like, oh, Come Back Home, My Little Chicks. I taught that one already. I taught it in August. Okay, well, I can pull that one out for the concert if I wanted, or I just know that they did it. Or like right now, as I'm thinking about songs for 1 grade, I think like, ooh, did I teach that to them last year? And I can pull up this song and poem map from last year, pull out their grade level, and I can see very, very quickly, did they do it yet or not? So, for example, oh, and I have this for K, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I even made it pre-K up to 8th grade. So it helps you sort of plan out and map out like, oh, yes, I did teach this. But again, it's very simple. You could do this on notebook paper, but it's just a little printout thing that you could use if you wanted to help you keep track of whether you taught something or not. Okay, let me flip back here. Okay, so does this tell you how to plan your lessons? Like, start with a song, then do a game, then do whatever. No. However, it does talk through like how you can document, how you might keep some of those things, what you might use to help you think through as you plan. And I think that's important too, because everyone is different. And if I said, well, first you should start with a game, and then you should start with a song, and then you should do whatever, like that doesn't work for everyone. But lesson plan templates are kind of universal, and they help you to sort of think through how you plan and why you might plan and what you might do that way. So I didn't talk in this specific lesson about the first this, then this, then this, because guess what? Not all my lessons do that. And especially from grade level to grade level, that varies. And if I said first do this and then do this and then do this, that might work for someone who teaches an hour-long lesson like me, but for someone who teaches half-hour lessons or 45-minute lessons, or that one year when I had to teach 25-minute lessons, it just messes things up. So this was just talking mostly about like the templates you could use, the planning you might do, and how you might think through some of that to give you an idea. All those lesson plans that I showed are linked or will be linked once I get the copy from school. One of them is editable. So the very first one I showed that was like, had all the boxes and the national standards, all that, that's editable. The rest are not editable just because I use clip art and stuff like that that's copyrighted, so I wasn't able to make that editable. But the very first one is editable if you're interested. Otherwise, use and change as you see fit to any of the other things. They're there for you if you're interested. Okay, I hope this gave you some ideas and thoughts about lesson planning and what you can use, resources you can use. If you have any questions about any of these, feel free to email me. My email is makemomentsmatter@gmail.com, or you can message me through Facebook, through my Facebook page or whatever. But if you have ideas, thoughts, send me a message, leave a comment wherever you're watching or listening to this, and let me know. Hope this was helpful. I'll see y'all next week for another Musical Mondays video then. Bye, everyone.